We've talked about the incoming transfers quite a bit, but who are the biggest incoming freshmen for Arizona State Sun Devils football? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today on this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast.
Are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like and subscribe and turn on those notifications so you get an update when we post new content. Stay in touch with that content by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. The Arizona State Sun Devils have 26 transfers coming in. The most recent of those transfers being Ewan Schuell, I think it's Schuell, coming from Nevada. He is New Mexico. He is a defensive lineman, 3-star, 6'3", 248 pounds. We are up to 26 transfers coming in. But Arizona State has 20 incoming freshmen, and they were able to get that number up quite a bit from the 5 that was before the 2022 season started with Herm Edwards up to the 20 that we have now. Some big name guys coming in that we're going to talk about, but overall, looking at the class as a whole, there's a handful of guys that I'm kind of expecting to be an immediate impact for the team. That's what we're going to discuss today. Of course, there's several guys who will be in competition for different roles that I anticipate will have a lot more rotation compared to other positions. But starting off the list with my number 5, I got Kyson Brown. With Brown, he's a running back. He's a 5-star running back coming out of Lancaster, Texas. 3-star product, 5'10", 195 pounds. This is going to be a really, really interesting year for the running back position. You've got the only returner from last year that saw significant playing time, and I'm going to put significant in quotes, was Tevin White, 4-star product who is in line for some really good playing time this year. However, 2 guys are coming in via the transfer portal, DeCarlos Brooks from Cal and Cameron Scatabo from Sacramento State. Now, Scatabo is one of the guys who will be probably the most favorite to land the running back 1 spot with the team. Hard not to see why. And from there, it'll be a competition between a handful of guys. You're going to have Tevin White. You're going to have DeCarlos Brooks. You're going to have Kyson Williams. And you're going to have some other dudes, Charles Hall and what's his name? Deontay Elliott. There's going to be a lot of good competition on that team at the running back spot. When I look at Brown, I think that he has an opportunity to seize a role here with this team because right now there's very little that's promised to any of these guys. I feel like Tevin White and Cameron Scatabo are really the only guys who should be guaranteed any playing time this year. Everyone else should be having to fight for that opportunity. And there's no reason that Kyson Brown can't be in that competition as well. There's no reason why he can't be able to stand out and strut his stuff and show whether or not he does belong on that field or not. So Kyson Brown is my number 5 guy that I'm looking at. Number 4, I've got Ashley Williams. Ashley Williams is a 3-star edge rusher at 6'5", 225 pounds, coming out of Zachary, Louisiana. The thing that really helps Williams, again, similar to what we talked about with Brown, is there's going to be a lot of open competition, specifically at the edge rushing room. Now, the team was fortunate enough to return Garen Stansbury and Anthony Cooper from the transfer portal, and Michael Matus will be back from ACL injury that he suffered last year. But most of those guys are very, very old, or quote unquote old. They just don't have a lot of youth at the position right now. That's why they attacked it so much. via the transfer portal, and they've got so many guys coming in like Tristan Munday and Prince Dorba and so many other guys that are coming in to compete. But Ashley Williams is going to be one of those guys that I also anticipate will be able to compete. He was, for what it's worth, the 22nd prospect in Louisiana and the 49th prospect at his position. I really like the size that he has here at 6'5", 225. There's definitely room for him to continue to build and get bigger and shape his body into that college role, that next step that he's going to be looking to get into. Overall, I just think that there's a lot of potential competition at the edge rushing spot. I think there's a lot of potential for him to be one of the more productive freshmen for Arizona State. There's not a lot of like huge big name guys here, but Ashley Williams is one of the more highly, what's the word I'm looking for? Like highly recruited players that Arizona State was able to land. And that does mean something for the team. And this will be one of the reasons why I believe there is a really good opportunity here for Ashley Williams to get starting time. This is the reason why I have him listed as my number 4 player for incoming freshmen. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sports app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to points scored and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss out on the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. As always, thank you guys for tuning in to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. Make the Locked On College Basketball podcast your second listen of the day. Everything you need to know about college basketball in one place. Hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Locked On College Basketball available on YouTube and wherever you're getting your podcasts. Back into our conversation, looking at the top freshmen coming in for the team, at least according to me. We're going to go with my number 3 guy, linebacker, Kavion Thunderbird. First of all, amazing name. That just sounds like a dynamic football player. That sounds like a dude who's going to absolutely pop you in the middle of the field. 3-star linebacker coming out of Chicago, Illinois. 6'1", 215 pounds is the build. He was the number 20 prospect in Illinois, the number 78 prospect at linebacker. There is no position facing more change, in my opinion, this year than the linebacker spot. You have lost Merlin Robertson and Kyle Sully, who were there for 5 years. Robertson a starter since his freshman year, Sully a big-time contributor the last several years. You lost both of them. That already was a very lofty goal to replace those guys. You also lost Connor Sully, who was one of the rotational linebackers for the team last year when they played a lot of nickel. He was able to see the field quite a bit. All 3 of them are gone. Coming in, there is some intriguing guys. Will Schaefer and James Joncom will be some of the guys that we're going to be looking forward to the most, but outside of them, it's going to be a lot of open competition. There's some guys that are coming in via the transfer portal, like Crew Jackson, who plays a little bit of like linebacker safety hybrid. Tate Romney will be another guy who will be able to compete, but this is going to be Travion Brown should have one of the starting roles locked down, but there really is going to be a big fat open competition at the linebacker spot for guys to come in and seize their opportunity. And Thunderbird, kind of one of those guys I think will have that opportunity to come in and compete for starting time. Looking at Thunderbird, it's not like he's the biggest guy in the world, but he does kind of fit that more modern linebacker role. He does look like the guy that you do see a lot more in defenses today than you saw 10, 15 years ago. He is that smaller little spark plug that can fly around the field. He can make the sure tackles. We'll see if he can continue to progress in coverage and how everything else continues to come along for him. But looking at him right now, I don't see any reason, again, like the guys I've mentioned already, I don't see any reason he can't compete for big time starting play. And that's the reason why he's my number 3 guy on the list ahead of the other two, because I look at the linebacker spot and there's just so much room for competition that this is a guy that I anticipate should be in the thick of it. Going to be a really interesting battle in spring and in training camp to see how that linebacker spot shakes out. I would anticipate a lot of rotation with so many new faces in the group. And depending on what Brian Ward wants to roll out, I think it'll be a really interesting spot. Kavion Thunderbird, my number 3 guy. Now going to my number 2 guy. Maybe a little bit of bias here, but also just very, very excited to see him in general, will be CJ Fight. CJ Fight was previously on the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, so make sure you check out that interview if you haven't already and get to know the incoming freshman. CJ Fight coming out of Tatum, Texas, where Texas grows high school prospects on trees. 3-star prospect, 6'1", 280 pounds, the 143rd defensive line prospect, and the 224th prospect in Texas. Take it for what it is, guys. Texas has a lot of really good football players, so that's not a slight at Fight whatsoever that he is so lowly ranked. That just tells you how many guys are coming out of Texas. When talking to Fight, this is a dude that already has the brute strength that we're going to be looking for on the defensive line. He mentioned that he is squatting almost 500 pounds. It might have even been a little more than that. The dude completely understands leverage. He understands the different ways that you're going to be able to win your battles from the interior of the defensive line. Looking at the interior of the defensive line, there is quite a bit of competition for Arizona State. You know, BJ Green will be back for the team. He's going to be one of the favorites to be one of the starters on that defensive line. Deshaun Mallory is coming in through the transfer portal from Michigan State. There's also going to be several other guys that are coming in. Landon Thomas is an incoming freshman. Samuel Benjamin is another transfer coming to the defensive line. There's a lot of really good competition on the defensive line. The reason why I have Fight a little bit higher than the guys behind him is I really like the potential. And I think that he's got a mentality to him of proving people wrong for being an overlooked prospect coming out of high school. I feel like there's maybe an edge that he's going to play with compared to some of his other guys. And again, I will totally admit there might be a little bit of bias here because I did get an opportunity to speak with him and I was blown away. I'm not shy to admitting my biases with guys that I get to talk to and grow a relationship with. But looking at CJ, looking at the things he already brings to the table as an interior defensive lineman, to be able to just manhandle and generate a good old-fashioned bull rush is always going to get me excited about your potential. That's why I have CJ Fight as my number 3 guy heading into training camp this year for the freshmen. One more time, thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Sun Devils. Tune in to the Locked On College Basketball podcast with experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton as they bring you everything you need to know on and off the court. Hear from big-name experts, insiders, and players on Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you're getting your podcasts. Number 1, before we get that far, there's still quite a few guys that I will be very, very interested in. Corbin Hendricks, incoming wide receiver. That'll be really interesting to see how that shakes out. Keith Abney, listed as an athlete. I'm not entirely sure where the team's going to want to get him. Sean Na is an interior offensive lineman. He should get an opportunity as well. I mentioned Landon Thomas on the defensive line. Overall, there's going to be a lot of really good competition. And I understand that a lot of people aren't going to be overly invested because, these guys are only 3-star prospects. Well, get past that and understand that they're going to be the foundation of the youth that Arizona State is building. But number 1 should not come as a surprise to anyone. It's the highest rated player that Arizona State pulled in this class. It's one of the 10 highest recruited players that Arizona State has brought in as a whole since the days of the recruiting. It's Jaden Rashada. Jaden Rashada, quarterback, was at one point a 5-star. Now he's only a 4-star. I just don't know how that works. But the number 81 prospect in the nation, the number 7 quarterback prospect, and the number 6 prospect coming out of California. Jaden Rashada is he's got all the intangibles. This is a guy to get excited about. 6'4", 175 pounds. He can run. He's got an arm to throw the deep ball. He can hit the passes on the outside, inside the hashes. He can take off as a runner, make the big plays. I look at Jaden Rashada and I see this giant ball of clay that already has some pretty good potential. So there's not much need to worry about whether or not he's going to turn into a stud. I think that there's already potential there for him to come in and be a stud. But obviously, there's also going to be that realization that he's going to be working with Kenny Dillingham and he's going to have so many great offensive minds like Bo Baldwin to help shape him into the future of the quarterback position for Arizona State. What will be interesting, we'll be taking a look at the quarterback competition because there is a lot of guys. There's Kenny Dillingham has mentioned that he sees 5 guys on this roster right now that could compete for the starting time. So outside of Rashada, you have incoming transfer Drew Pine, you have incoming transfer Jacob Conover, you have returning senior Trenton Bourget, and you have returning scout team expert Bennett Meredith. There's a lot of competition in this quarterback room, and I could not be more excited for it because competition is going to bring out the best in these guys, and I think whoever ends up winning the starting job for week 1 could be the answer for the team at quarterback moving forward, at least for the remainder of the year. Because obviously, if it's Bourget, that's really only 1 year. But I do think that one of these quarterbacks could be very, very good for Dillingham, and it's hard not to believe that Rashada can't be that guy when you consider the highly recruited aspect, the fact that Dillingham had been recruiting him since his days as the offensive coordinator at Florida State, the fact that this is such a talented, like I said, giant piece of clay, a ball of clay, so to speak, for the team to shape into something special. It's the reason why Rashada is my number 1 player. I'm really interested to see how the rest of the transfers look. I'll have to dive into them some more. And I'm sure that I will take a look at combining the incoming freshmen with the incoming transfers as well to talk about the most important players coming in. We'll take a look as well at the returning players, but that is all I got for you on this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in. As always, remember, wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like and subscribe and turn on those notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. Stay in touch with that content by following me on Twitter at Richie Brads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Until next time, though, you keep it locked right here on Locked On